Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. Today, we are once again exploring the deeper dimensions of yoga, life, and the path of awakening. And today, I am so honored that you're here to enjoy this conversation with David Swenson, who is one of the most respected and beloved Ashtanga Yoga teachers worldwide. He has over 4 decades of practice and teaching and has been instrumental in teaching Ashtanga and bringing Ashtanga to the West and to students all over the world. He's known for his deep authenticity, his playful wisdom, and making Ashtanga Yoga accessible, his really accessible teaching style. And many of us started this practice looking at his practice manual and using that as our guide to the practice. So in this episode, we are going to dive into a new book that David has written called Why Only Dead Fish Go with the Flow. And there's a much longer subtitle, which you'll get the pleasure of hearing inside our conversation. It's all about his early days of Ashtanga Yoga, but also his early days of life and his family. And we're going to ask some deep questions about his family and hearing about some of the struggles that his family personally went through, that he personally went through, and some of the maybe motivating factors that created for him, that moved him on the path of yoga and into spirituality or into seeking out different forms of structure in his life. And so whether you're a seasoned practitioner who's met David in person, or you're simply curious about the roots and rhythms of the Ashtanga Yoga practice, this is a rich and inspiring episode and conversation with one of the pioneer teachers of Ashtanga Yoga. So I cannot wait to jump into this conversation. But before we get going, I want to remind you a quick note that the doors are open right now. I am taking active enrollment for my upcoming signature course, Ancient Breathing 2.0. This is a 6-week journey into the art and science of pranayama and breathwork. We start with live classes next week. So sign up now, come on in, learn directly from me, live, in-person, online classes. And there's also 6 modules inside the course, plus 2 bonus modules, and you get to come inside my inner circle for 3 months. So you're going to get tons and tons of support to really help you ground and establish your own personal pranayama practice and really create a deep extension of your yoga practice and spiritual journey. So if you feel ready to either begin or if you want to start to learn how to guide others, now is the time to join us, and you can find the link in my show notes of this episode. And if you can't, just send me a DM. I'm happy to shoot you the link over Instagram. So let's jump in and get to know David Swenson on a little bit more personal level. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm here with Russell Case.
Hello, everyone.
And we are joined by someone who needs no introduction, but we're going to introduce him anyway. David Swenson. Hello, dear friend. How are you?
David Swenson.
Great. Good to see you. Well, Svensson, yeah. Svensson.
Yeah.
From Sweden. My grandparents.
Yeah.
We were just there. We mentioned you often as a reference.
Okay.
Yeah. Svensken pojke, we said. He was a Swedish boy doing yoga.
I can only say svenska flicka.
Flicka.
Which is Swedish girl.
Swedish girl. That's right.
Svenska
Yeah.
flicka.
Svenska flicka. Yeah.
So funny.
I'll tell you, the only reason I know that is my father, he spoke a little Swedish. His grandparents spoke no English. They came over on a boat from Sweden. And there was a triathlon in Lake Tahoe, California. And it was men and women all running. And a woman was running by and she was Swedish. My father was yelling, "Svenska flicka, svenska flicka, svenska flicka." So I learned svenska flicka.
So your father was a very tall man and your mother was quite short.
Yes.
And so you and Doug kind of met in the middle.
I'm actually the tallest in the family of siblings.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not and I'm shrinking, which is another story. But yeah, my father is 6'3" and my mother is 5 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and in their
difference.
wedding photo, someone wrote the long and short of it.
I read that chapter.
Yeah.
That's right. So you have a book. Can you show us all your book that you wrote?
Here's my book.
You're now literally an open book, David.
Only dead fish go with the flow.
Now I am an open book.
Yeah, that's right. Only dead fish go with the flow.
It has a very long subtitle that you have to read around the book.
Oh, my goodness. My fantastic, sometimes clumsy,
often humorous, occasionally frightening, always sincere, and possibly inspiring tales of living life in pursuit of my dreams.
Oh.
End of chapter 1.
End of chapter 1. So
just the title.
I just read that you were 67 while you're writing the book.
Oh, even young? I mean, I'm 68 now.
You've been writing it for a while then.
I started during COVID.
Oh, sure.
That was the impetus to write the book.
Nice.
People would say, "Oh, David, your stories are great. You should write a book."
Mm-hmm.
And I always said, "I don't have time to write a book."
Mm-hmm.
And if you recall COVID, we had nothing but time. So I was like, that excuse gone.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I sat down and started typing. And you probably read David Williams' book, yeah?
Yeah, we did, actually.
My Search for Yoga, which he's in a phenomenal storytale, beautiful, wonderful book. And his story goes from the time he heard about yoga until he learns the last posture of Ashtanga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, where should I start my book? And I thought, well, how about the day of my birth? So mine goes from my first day of my birth, which I don't have actual memories of that, but from the stories I was told, I pieced it together. And so mine spans my life until the year 2002.
Wow.
Stuff happened after that, but the book was getting so long, I thought it was a good place to pause.
You can do it part 2 later.
You know, I have to say that for me, obviously a big part of my yoga journey is learning yoga from you and your brother, actually, but also, one of your students, Sharon Moon, and coming up out of Texas and Austin, Texas. And so for a lot of people who do Ashtanga, you're a big part of their yoga journey and a big part of their life. But I was still surprised in reading your book, like how many commonalities there were. I kept feeling like, oh, wow, that was a part of my journey too. That was something that happened to me too. I also cut off one of my facial features, like you cut off a piece of your ear.
Well, to be clear, I was not Vincent van Gogh.
You didn't do it to yourself.
The dog took a liking to my ear and chomped a piece of it off.
A beautiful boxer dog from your neighbor bit off your ear.
Named Champ.
Champ chomped you.
Champ chomped my ear.
I have a lot of Swedish family members, and coming up out of Illinois and Chicago, all those Swedes moved there. Your family was in the north, got tired of the cold and moved down to Texas. And I have a grandfather, Albin Lund, who was kicked out of the house for alcoholism and drinking. And you had talked about that deep core of Swedish alcoholism in your family. I just kept running into it, with this book. It's like a very Midwestern story, a coming of age story. But I wondered, it seems so unique to come around and find yourself as an Ashtanga yoga teacher, but still, like, I imagine so many people when they read the book will see themselves in it.
I hope that people see this as a potential to recognize their own reflection, if you will, because all of us have tales to tell. Life doesn't move in straight lines. We don't go from A to B, or people have only known me as a yoga teacher. They don't. I think this will give a glimpse into the behind the scenes and the ups, the downs, the struggles, the failures, the joys, the sorrows, the pain. so many different topics are woven in, and maybe you've experienced this. I'm saying that, Russell is in the process of reading it, and Harmony, maybe not yet, but as you're swimming through the pages of the book, there are messages there. Sometimes they're clearly stated. Other times they're left for you to discover in the camouflage of the story. So I believe that from that standpoint, yes, people reading the book can relate to many of the hardships and joys that I've experienced. Yeah.
The titles of the chapters are really funny, and I'm very amused to read them. I remember we had
because David's very funny.
David's very funny. We had a couple of days where we were kind of confused by the title of your book, and I realize now that the title of your book, Only
Dead Fish Go With the Flow.
Only Dead Fish Go With the Flow, is like, that's another message. It's another example or a moral that you've learned in your life. Because you did swim right up against the stream, didn't you?
Well, this is a Texas saying.
Is it?
Down
Really?
in the South, only dead fish go with the flow. I didn't make this up.
Really?
I just pulled this bit of spiritual wisdom from my Southern roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about this struggle, about this difficulty. And interesting, like you said, oh, David's a funny guy. I tend to like to have a good sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine, she read the book, and she and her daughter had both been to my workshops. And so the daughter had not read the book and said to her mom, "Oh, Mom, wow, your face must hurt from laughing so much because it's David's book." And she said, "Well, no, it's really not that funny, because really it's not all humorous. Some of the humor that we come up with is due to pain and suffering. We come out the other side and find a way to discover joy even in the middle of pain or difficulty, because I grew up during the civil rights movement and all of that. My father was a criminal defense attorney, took me to see his clients in jail, and many of them were black men whose crime was the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember poignant memory of this man looking at my father. He said, "Mr. Swenson, if you don't get me out of here, I'll die in my cell tonight. They will kill me."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was this kind of thing, that the reality behind the headlines of the news I was witnessing. And so it wasn't abstract. But then within that, he said, a lot of the titles are funny, and some of them only make sense after you read the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you just go, "What?" Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Bicycle Wild Tube is the title of one of the chapters. Bicycle Wild Tube. What is that? Well, you have to read.
You have to read it to find out.
I did want to talk to you about your dad for a moment. Tricky Dick's house, for example.
Yeah.
You used to surf near Tricky Dick's house.
Yeah, and people that don't know, historically, that was a name for Richard Nixon.
That's right.
Yeah.
One question I have got this early childhood memory of encountering, and you talked about this in your book, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, when they gave the fist sign at the Olympics. And I remember being about 5 or 6 years old and sitting with my grandfather in Illinois, and he was just so disgusted. And I remember it was a violent response to seeing it on TV. He had served and represented the United States and Italy and lived in a foxhole for 2 years. And his brother had died over Holland. But I also kind of understood, even as a 5-year-old, that this wasn't just about them giving the Black Power symbol. It was about, there might have been a racist element to his reaction to Black people speaking their mind, for example. And I wanted to know if in the chapter where you talk about all of the different episodes that were kind of giving context to your life and to you deciding to wave your freak flag, your long hair, were there moments where you encountered your own family observing this, where you kind of watched their observation and then their reaction informed the decisions you were going to make?
My family was incredibly supportive. Throughout the book, you'll see how I just revel at the wonderment of my parents. I can't believe they were my greatest gurus, my greatest teachers in this life were my parents. They taught by example. not just words, but by how they did things. So it was observing their interactions with other people and their reactions to the world around me, which colors all of our experience at those impressionable ages. Growing up in Texas at that time, it's hard to believe in my lifetime, there were still separate water fountains, for colors. There were separate toilets, men, women, colored, in my lifetime. And a lot of my little friends when I was growing up were racist because their parents were racist. And then they would be confused if my parents didn't support some racist viewpoint that had been dictated to them by their parents. So it was the environment of trying to understand and see deeper meaning. And those civil rights protests and statements were done for a reason. It was meant to shock people a little, to get you to think. America's a great country, but it's not perfect. And so sometimes it's healthy for us to look at our imperfections and try to see how we can continue to improve, which was the goal of the Constitution, right? To have this evolution of a country and its people. And it's not easy, it's messy. And sometimes the reactions that others might have for these acts of not defiance, but an act of bringing awareness to issues is not pleasant. And these people risk not just their careers, but their life. You read about other people there, Muhammad Ali, he lost his boxing career because of his views. Martin Luther King was murdered because of his views. There's a lot of those kind of things, right? That if people, even if you don't agree with them, you got to respect their courage, that they're taking a stand beyond just smiling for the camera. Doesn't mean it's always right, but we live in America and people have the right to protest and to make those kind of statements.
It seems like America, in a way, is moving backwards. Like so much progress was made during this time in history that you were speaking to, a lot of progress compared to what it was previously, the civil rights movement. And now there's so much, I don't know, maybe it was always there and it's just coming to the surface. What do you think is going on right now?
It's always been there. It's now just been given permission to raise its head. It's always been. It hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
And the arc of history is long, right? And so it may not even be in our lifetime, but hopefully things keep inching forward. We have to learn from mistakes. And the pendulum will swing from extremes, where things become too much this way and too much that way. And it's easier as humans to choose the extreme. The middle path of the Buddha is the hardest way. Even yoga people, you get a bunch of yoga people together talking and we all think we're so open-minded and liberal and understanding and compassionate. It's easy to be that way when you're surrounded by people that look like you, think like you, eat like you, dress like you. You want to put that into a test. Go and have a conversation with someone who's totally political opposite with you and see how wonderful and balanced we are, right? This is the test of our maturity. It's easy to, when you're surrounded by like-minded people, to just spout off how wonderful we are.
Yeah.
But the reality of the world is we need to find that middle way, and that has become poison now. Even politically, it used to be political leaders could have different opinions.
Yeah.
And it was considered a strength if you were able to negotiate with the opposing party and come up with some middle ground compromise. Now that is horrible. You can't do that. And so what's happened is there's a little sliver, like 2% of the people in the middle somewhere, that actually are going to be able to do that. Everyone else has chosen their camp, and it's like that. It's spoken about in the Vedas. It's Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga. People lived for 100,000 years. And everything was in harmony. The life expectancy was 100,000 years. They had airplanes made from flowers that they flew from the power of mantras. The climate was in balance. Everything was perfect. This went on for, many, many generations. Over time, things began to degrade and life expectancy was down to 10,000 years. Things weren't perfect, but they were still pretty good. Then it keeps degrading, life expectancy down to only 1,000 years. Things are a little worse. It's not, but it's now we're in the age of Kali Yuga. It's described that this life expectancy is 100 years. Kali Yuga is called the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And in this age, it is difficult for even two people to agree upon anything. And so it's actually predicted all this stuff, right? It just becomes more and more of a fight. But in these times, there's great potential for growth, because when we're struggling, you've got to make choices you may normally not make. When we're forced into an uncomfortable situation, how we react reveals our character and our true nature.
There's a wonderful example of that in your book. And I'm glad to see that we're able to follow a linear path here, which is how I like to structure these podcasts.
Airplanes made of flowers,
that's nice.
Powered by mantras.
So one of my dear friends is a guy named Terry Greer, who was superintendent of the HISD, Houston Independent School District, where you went to school. You know what HISD is. And he was CEO of the Joyce Foundation for some time. You were a board member of the Joyce Foundation.
I was not a board member, but I was at a big dinner they had somewhere. I sat next to him and we had a good chat about school system. Yeah,
that's awesome. He's a great guy, and he still calls me now and then and checks in on me. And I was just so struck thinking about how different it is now that the superintendent of HISD was having me stand up and talk to his school board about trying to get Ashtanga Yoga into the schools. Whereas when you were in high school, there was an event, and I would love it if you could tell the story, where the HISD school board had stood up to make sure that you got your hair cut.
Okay, so any people who have been to my workshops more than once have probably heard this story. So growing up in Texas, you could not have long hair. And this is 1970, 71, 72. Everybody has long hair. It's hippies, right? But they had posted drawings of acceptable haircuts in school. A boy's sideburns could not come below the earlobe. Hair could not touch your collar. Yeah. And the girl had to kneel down and her skirt had to touch the earth. But girls were wearing miniskirts and things. This was not some posh, private educational institution. This is a place where all of the principals and administrators were ex-football coaches. Yeah. And you still called them coach. If you called them coach Garrison, coach whatever, right? And they liked to be addressed like that. And they were rule enforcers. They didn't care if you could read or write, but they cared if you had long hair, and that was an issue. So one day, one of these guys comes up to me and he says this, boy, that's how he started a sentence, right? Boy, you know what time it is, boy? Well, it's time for a haircut. Now, there is one word you are never meant to say to these guys, and that is no. Yep. So I look at him and I say, no, I'm not going to cut my hair. What do you mean, boy? I told you cut your hair, boy. Long hair on a boy, that's a distraction. I said, that may very well be the case, but I'm not cutting my hair. Now we're at a standoff. He doesn't know what to do. They know my father's this defense attorney. My brother and sister had been to the school prior to me. They're going to kick me from school. But they decide to have a community meeting where the entire HISD, Houston Independent School District, which is hundreds and hundreds of students. I mean, there were a lot of students in one school. There was hundreds of kids. So there's a lot of people. They have it at Memorial High School gymnasium in the basketball court. And there's a stage set up. And on the stage is a big, long table. And all of the administrators for the school district are up there. So not just one, there's like a bunch of them. I don't know. They all had different parts of the Houston School District or something. And they each have a microphone in front of them on the table. And out on the floor, there's a sea of people. Students, their parents, teachers, faculty, and one microphone in the middle of the basketball court. So these guys up there, they all look the same. They look like, well, I don't know if I should say, they look constipated, a little like just. And they give their standard presentation that if we do not take control of this, we have to have rules. If we don't have rules, all societal structure could collapse. If we allow these hippies to grow their hair, who knows what's next? We need to grab this right now, nip it in the bud, finish this, or everything is going to collapse. So basically, each of them give varying views on the same way. Then they open it up for the public to speak if they wish. People are intimidated to approach a microphone unless you're a trial lawyer. You're used to doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But my father's tall, so he already kind of stands out in the crowd. He just calmly walks up to the microphone and looks at these guys and says, "My dear gentlemen, to my knowledge, Jesus had long hair. Moses had long hair. Albert Einstein had long hair, and the founding fathers of this great country, they all had long hair. My sons, therefore, are in very fine company, and I'm not going to force them to cut their hair. So I simply ask of you, what is the alternative?" They were dumbfounded, literally speechless.
Yeah.
And so they leave the stage and they go off in some side office somewhere for like 20 minutes. And there's all this murmur in the crowd and people clapping my dad on the back. They come back and with the great pride in their face and their chest puffed up, they lean into their microphone. Remember, my father's question before they departed the stage was, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
They look out there with a straight face and say, short-haired wig.
Short-haired wig.
Those boys that do not want to cut their hair have to wear a wig. I wore a short-haired wig for 3 years to high school.
OMG.
Yeah. And that was the environment. It was very repressive, oppressive. And I mean, being the son of an attorney, I saw a loophole because they just said you had to wear a wig. They didn't say how.
That's right.
I wore one inside out with the cloth side up and the ring of hair and my hair hanging out the back. I had a little hair hat, hideous thing. And, I did that for 3 years. And then as the story goes in the book, I leave Texas and go to California and so forth. But that was the wig story.
I love that story.
And the Houston Independent School. Yeah, it was so. And then when I saw that you guys were trying to get yoga into the schools, you should have consulted me up front because I've been through it, with yoga. People called it the devil's work. People called the police on us, literally. Police cars rolled up. My brother and I were doing yoga in the park in Texas. I've taught yoga in places where I just didn't call it yoga. I taught in this tough inner city place where all these weightlifters and stuff. And so I said, I'm going to teach you guys some power stretching. And these guys are like, oh, I could use some power stretching. One point they're in a posture and they're breathing with this sound. They think it's cool, just like power breathing. And one guy turns and goes, this is yoga, isn't it? Like, well, before I answer, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But if the goal is to get yoga into schools, the benefits of yoga, as soon as you call it yoga, people are going to be up in their arms. In Texas particularly, they're going to say, this is religion. You're forcing my child to be a Hindu and idolatry and blah, 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 blah.
Well, honestly, yes, I completely agree. And we did a lot to change the whole curriculum to make it suitable for kids. But where we got sued, of all places, was Encinitas. That's where we got sued.
Well,
and that's where you went and had such an amazing time in high school. But in Texas and Florida, we had a great time teaching yoga to kids.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Things are moving up. See, things are moving forward.
But I think it was you and all your hippie friends moving to Encinitas that the hardcore religious nuts that were there, the real hardcore Christians, they had been preparing this fight for us for a generation. And when we finally made a move to get the yoga into schools, it's like, yes, it's that kid, David Swenson. This is the fight we've been waiting for.
See, they were right in Texas. We'd have made him cut his hair. None of this would have happened.
That's right.
Well, I mean, there were already a bunch of hippies in California. To be clear, we weren't the ones that started hippies in California. They sort of got that ball rolling on their own.
Yeah.
But what's happened is those places have become so expensive. It used to just be, you could live there as a broke hippie and get by. But as prices went way up, the people that have a lot of money have different political views. You know what I mean? So that's what changed it.
Yeah, 1,000%.
I'm so curious. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on, because you're such a kind of go against the flow and rule breaker in this situation, and also lived in a culture where there was so many rules and, need to conform. And then you go and join the Hare Krishnas, which is like, in this context, for sure, against this set of rules. But then as you enter the Hare Krishnas, I mean, there's a lot of rules, right? When you're in that organization as a participant. Devotee. Thank you. Yes. I was trying to think of the Sanskrit word.
Yeah.
And so how did you like reconcile that? Like, did it not kind of start to rub you against?
I'll tell you, it makes sense because I've asked all these questions in my own heart, right? Too.
Of course.
My parents were so open-minded and liberal. They just wanted us to follow our heart. So the rules in our home were basically, you don't want you to get hurt. We want you to be able to support yourself. Are you going to be a doctor or we don't care. We want you to be happy. So there weren't that many rules in that. Yeah. So I think subconsciously I sought something out that had a lot of rules. Mm-hmm. The Hare Krishna movement, there's rules for everything. What you got to do before you poop, after you poop, the mantras you say for everything. And there's just rule. Yeah. And so you probably have determined that, if I'm going to do something, I'm all in. I'm not doing something halfway. I'm diving in there. So I lived the life. It was very strict life of celibacy and chanting 2 hours a day on my beads. I had a spiritual name and dove into it. 5 years.
Chanted the mantras before your feet touch the floor and before you go to the bathroom and after and before you eat and after and
everything. Yeah. I had a thread in this ceremony. I had a Brahmin's thread. I chanted Gayatri mantra 3 times a day. I had a guru and I had my fill of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even within Ashtanga, there's rules, but to me, there's self-expression within the practice of Ashtanga. But what's happened is some people are trying to turn it into this thing that it's just this straight line thing and and I'm like, but that doesn't work, right? There's boundaries, but within it, there's plenty of room for self-expression. So yes, I believe that I subconsciously sought that out because my parents weren't strict disciplinarians. However, my brother and I, and sister as well, we weren't into funky stuff. We weren't doing drugs. We weren't, keep in mind, my father's a criminal defense attorney. Yeah. His kids wanted to grow their hair long, stretch their bodies, and not eat meat. He was like, could be worse. They're not robbing drugstores or, killing people or something. Yeah, whatever. Right?
He's like, this could get a lot worse. We're good with this.
We're okay with that stuff. Yeah.
I have a question about your dad before we kind of maybe move on to surfing. It was a massive part of your life was the surf. But your family had this lovely, gregarious hospitality. Everyone was welcome. Everyone was welcome to be fed. Your parties inevitably turned massive. The district attorney would come. The big judges in the city would come. You have these big celebrations. And your father seemed to be on course to be a great man of the city. And what I'm really interested to hear is this sudden change in fortune for your family. And I've experienced that for my own. Suddenly you have to just couple of days, you've got to move out and move into a cheap house on the cheap part of town. And because your father had succumbed to alcoholism or the privations of alcoholism. He hadn't passed away at that point. But I just want to, it seems like such an incredibly, as they call it, adverse childhood experience to just suddenly we got to move and we're not doing well.
Keep in mind, what you're describing is the straw you drop on there. It wasn't like everything was fine and we didn't know he was drinking and one day we had to leave our house. Yeah. I mean, we could see things deteriorating, and I talk about that in the book, and witnessing an addict is not pleasant. And the people around them many times are more wounded by their addiction than they are themselves, or equally. I credit my mother for not trying to hide these things. He took me to AA meetings and explained, your father has a disease. And he was on this graph, and he was either going to stop drinking or going to die. And he owed some money to one of his friends who was this really wealthy, super rich guy in Houston. My dad owed him some money, and so he couldn't pay him back. I'll tell you, I learned something later, which you would have read in the book. We don't want to give the whole book away, but I find out later, this man approached my mom and said, my father's name was Stanley. He goes, Stanley owes me this money. Well, Vi, you could work that off. Start sleeping with her. My mother is not someone you want up with. You know what I mean? Like, she just told him where to shove that and picked us up, sold everything, moved out of the house. I got a paper route to help because my father had lost his job and he took our house as payment. And he didn't need the money. The guy was, at that time, multimillionaire, you know? So yeah, it was shocking. But at this point, it was my mom that was the rock. Yeah, she was just like, this is what's happening. And we worked hard. And not too long after that, my dad stopped drinking. So, you know, he did stop and became sober and became a support structure for many other people. He stopped smoking and drinking at the same time. Yeah. He smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
That's basically, you're finishing one cigarette and you use that to light the next one.
Yeah, that's right.
And you wake up in the morning and ashtrays, and you didn't even tell us. One day you're like, there's a painting on that wall. You know, because the smoke has settled and you're like, whoa, what's different? Oh yeah, I stopped smoking. I was like, okay. Everybody smoked in the 50s, everyone smoked. Even on all of the television shows, the guys would have a drink in one hand and a cigarette, you know, and for those parties my parents had, there were big bowls of cigarettes, and it was just a thing. But he stopped drinking, stopped smoking, turned his life around, and everything worked out, you know. But not everyone's so lucky.
Yeah.
No.
Because of my mother and the way that she presented everything, I didn't hate my father. I saw him as a guy with a disease, even though it was affecting us. However, had he been a violent drunk or beat us or beat my mother, I don't think I would have been so easy to have that lack of hatred. But because of how it was presented and our particular circumstance, we came out the other side, and I didn't lose respect for him because I understood that what he was going through was not uncommon. Yeah. And he ultimately came through the other side. Yeah. Not everybody's so lucky.
I just didn't know if there was a trigger for him. Like, was it the horrible nature of his work? Like, was there something that kind of broke him inside that felt like he needed to drink to get away from it?
Addiction doesn't have an easy answer. Some people just have an allergy to alcohol. Or you may be able to drink a glass of wine or whatever and be fine. Somebody that has an allergic reaction drinks 1 and 2 and 5, and then they wake up in a ditch 3 days later, right? Like, it's not that, oh, this thing happened and I want to drink a lot to forget it. He did go through horrible things, and it was the Second World War. He was a bombardier, and seeing his friends' planes shot down, or his friends that parachute out of their plane, their parachute catches fire, they fall to the ground, or the Germans would strafe them with gunfire and kill them while they were parachuting down, or just all sort of the things he witnessed. A lot of people then, it wasn't acceptable for a man to show emotions or to talk about these kind of pains. So a lot of people drank. But for some, it takes over and it becomes a demon that begins to consume you. And this is true with all sorts of addicts, because a lot of people took a bunch of drugs in the 60s and now they're, you know, whatever, CEOs of companies and stopped taking drugs, and others did and couldn't stop. So it's a chemical thing. Children of alcoholics are more likely to become an alcoholic. They have a greater sensitivity and lack of tolerance, that kind of thing. So I don't believe it was something in his life that made him just think, I want to drink. It was just like everybody drank, but then that becomes the place you're living without even realizing.
Yeah, it's relieving the trauma in some way that then becomes itself a trauma that is being relived through your own life.
I just want to make this clear too. The fact that someone's an addict does not mean they're less intelligent
or
less creative. Or look at all the wonderful creative people that died from drug overdoses and things. Prince and Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and Janis Joplin, and, you know, all these people that a lot of times it was because they had a physical pain in their body, or they can't sleep, or, you know, Elvis, you know, where they're pushed so hard that you take this stuff and then it has a diminishing return, right? So you got to take more and more and more, and then so it's horrible. And the fact that my dad came out the other side is amazing. And I have friends that are addicts. I've known other people, and it's easy to just look and say, well, why are you drinking? Or, just stop. It's complicated. There's a lot of threads, and there's not logic involved. It's not like a conscious thought that this person's, it's just this demon possesses you, like the demon comes into your body and it just starts making all of your choices without you, until you can slay the demon and stop. I knew one guy, he was an addict, and his family called me, and he was drunk. He had fallen off the wagon, as they say. And he trusted me, and so I was talking to him. I said, well, do you have alcohol with you now? Well, yeah. Okay, just as a favor, I just want you to go and pour it down the sink, just as a statement that you're going to not drink. A long pause. And he says, could I just have one more sip first? That kind of says it all.
Yeah.
I said, but that's the problem, is there can't be ever one more sip. Doesn't mean you're lesser. You have an allergy to this stuff. One sip is never one sip. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So yeah, it's a whole nother topic of discussion. But these are things I learned from my parents, to have compassion for people. It's easy to just judge them, but you don't know their circumstance, their situation.
I think one of the more beautiful sentences or passages in your book was your father describing the parachutists falling out of the airplanes as bloodied dandelion quills.
That was my description of it.
Yeah.
He didn't use those words, but from him telling me about this, that was the image that came to my mind. Because they're just floating, right? Like they're lifeless, and the wind is just carrying them wherever now.
That's a hell of a thing to see.
Yeah.
I have to say that for Harmony and I, both having kind of come up out of working class chaos and alcoholism and drug addiction and violence, for us, we also kind of made a very similar decision towards purification and yoga and discipline. And for Harmony, it was ballet, much like maybe for your sister Diana, it was ballet. Certainly, we sought out systems and structures to organize our life that had, up until that point, been just chaos. And so that's interesting that you mentioned that you sought out discipline for yourself.
Yeah, I think so. It might have been subconscious or conscious. Yeah. But there are many ways to be addicted to things.
Yeah, there is.
Addicted to yoga. There was this guy, I enjoy interacting with people that are really sort of out there, that have lived full lives, that are not necessarily totally tethered to. So this guy I met, I knew him for about an hour. I bought a juicer from him.
Yeah.
But I saw a notice on the board in a health food store, a guy selling a juicer. I go find him. I have to go to the bank and withdraw $200 or whatever it was to pay him for the juicer. And just in the course of this time, he's talking to me. He goes, yeah, man, everybody thinks they partied the hardest, man. You know what I mean, man? But I know I did, man. There's like 10 years there. I can't remember a fucking thing, man. You know what I mean, man? Like, whoa. He goes, yeah, my thing was I did smack, and some downers and pot. You know what I mean, man? Now, I don't know, I'm about 20 pounds overweight, but I figure Twinkies are better than smack. You know what I mean, man? And then he says something that stuck with me to this day. It is so brilliant. He goes, yeah, man, I was talking to this guy the other day, man, to my brother, man. I said, we all got to have a couple straight edges. You know what I mean, man? We all got to have a couple fucking straight edges. You know what I mean, man? Because if you ain't got no straight edges, you're going to roll right off the edge of reality, man. It's like, whoa, that was deep. Yeah.
Deep for sure.
When you talk like that, I really could see you in a different life. I could see you right now living under the I-10, selling drugs.
There's still time.
Yeah, I can see it, though. Things could have gone differently for you. But
for all of us, there's a lot of things.
Oh man, for all of us. But you went in this incredible direction with you and Doug, your brother, who I know. You guys went to the surf and you went to health foods, which was just the term had just been invented by Paul Bragg, and you just like went in that direction by just this random coincidence and luck. You just went that way instead.
It was random for my brother and clear for me because it was my brother
Right.
that encountered all that stuff on a trip to California, and coming back, he was doing healthy things.
Mm-hmm.
He's my big brother. He's 5 years older than me. And he was wanting to do yoga and eat health foods and surfing. And I wanted to emulate what he was doing.
Yeah.
I joke and say, what if he'd have come home riding a Harley? And there's a biker gang. I'd be in East Texas now with a broken nose and a name like Lug Nut, sitting at a bar at,
living under the bridge.
8:00 in the morning. Yeah. We're living under the bridge. So we don't know. None of us do. And on the first page of the book, even before you get in there, there's this little, what's that? Can you read that?
How do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. Yeah.
Because we get these ideas that, I'm going to do this and that's going to happen. And rarely is that the case.
But it's fascinating because this title, Only Dead Fishes Go with the Flow, there has to be some aspect of having those straight edges or planning or aiming for something, as you say. So
yes.
How do you balance that out?
It's perfectly clear. Yoga means you make extraordinary effort and then detach from the results of your effort.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it comes into play. Yeah. And some yoga people can get upset with the title even. Wait a minute, man. It's all about go with the flow, man. I'm like, I don't know. Salmon can't say that. Next time you're hungry, just sit there and think, I'm just going to manifest some food, man. Just see if it flows in front of you. You got to make some effort, to make a meal, to go, whatever.
Get a job.
Yeah. But all of this is the paradoxical nature of these things. Yeah. It's never just one thing, because you can be structured, but then if you're tied too much to that and you hold on to it too long, sometimes it prevents you from something else. So yeah, we have a plan. Yeah. If you're going to go to India, okay, I've got to make this money. I got to save the money for a ticket. I have to buy a ticket. I'm going to go stay at, the Southern Star. I'm going to get one of those nice new houses in Mysore, and I'm going to do all this. And I'm going to get on that flight, and it's a United flight, and it leaves from here, and it goes to there. And you get there, the flight's 4 hours late. And then that means you missed your next flight. And so then you're stuck in Dubai or whatever for 3 days. And then you fly, and then they're rerouted because something else happens. But this is life also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All those people are like, oh, wow, I'm just going to go to 8 years of university, and be a doctor. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't really like being an attorney. Whatever. So yeah, you have a structure, but then if you hold on to it too much, there's potential that you risk just living an unhappy life because I'm sticking to this plan, even though it turned out to be a bad plan. But this is the paradox. We all have to make these choices because there's a tendency that you give up too soon also.
That's true.
Things get a little rough and say, that's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the other side of it. If you just, because as you read through the book, I really go the mile, to try to achieve something. And then, okay, it didn't work, but you got to put in the effort. Whether it's Ashtanga Yoga or you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, or you want to be a painter, or you want to be a yoga teacher, and you did your 200-hour, you even did your 500-hour, and you got your certificate, and you stepped out of that classroom and said, where are the students?
Exactly.
Well,
that's a real life experience there.
That's a real life experience, because now the work begins. You still got to get out there and teach forever, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of classes, and people are not all going to like you, and you'll have 3 people in a class. And if it's too difficult, then you stop. But so there's all of that. Where when do you push? When do you back off? When is it the moment that you say, it didn't work? And maybe it then comes back around, and later it works out. It's that same thing you were not ready to do or achieve becomes possible later.
Yeah. You brought up going to India. So I'm going to ask you about, you were just there with Shelley.
Yes.
And seeing Shruti after Sharat's passing. You've been through, Pattabhi Joyce's passing and now Sharat's unexpected passing. How was it? How was your time there? What are your reflections around kind of losing these two important people in your life?
But there's more than two. If you start looking,
Of
Rolf, Mati
Nancy.
Ezrati,
Yeah.
Nancy Gilgoff,
Nancy Gilgoff.
Pattabhi Joyce, Sharat.
Yeah.
It just makes me more and more appreciate each moment. And it's one reason I'm going to start pulling back from the amount of traveling and teaching I'm doing. Shelley and I want to spend more time together, et cetera.
Yeah.
But coming to your question about India, it was a conscious decision that we went there when we did.
Yeah.
When all the classes were over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's when we wanted to go. Because Shelley lost both her parents when she was young. When she was 15, her father passed in a tragic accident. And she lost her mom when her mom was only 60. But Shelley knows that at the first moments, there's all this energy. And Shruti, Sharat's wife, was distracted also. She had people around and students and doing the chant each morning. But we knew that when all that's over and she's sitting in that house by herself, because her kids also, her Shraddha, her daughter, was back in New York. Her son Sambhav back in Bangalore, literally by herself in the house. We were like, that's when we're going to go there. Yeah, and to see her and spend time with her. But it was also Saraswati.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about Shruti. It was about Sharat's mother, right? Saraswati. And I'm connected with all the members of the family, right? So to see Saraswati, whom I haven't seen in, I don't know, it's been 9 years or something since we were in Mysore last. And so it was healthy to see them. It was really mixed. On one hand, there was a deep despair and a sadness. But then this is a place that Shelley and I had a house for 10 years in Mysore, and the connections with all these people. We've known Sharat's kids since they were itty bitty, since they were just tiny little things. Yeah.
Known Sharat since he was itty bitty.
And I knew Sharat when he was 7 years old.
Yeah.
He was just a little kid. Took him and his sister Sharma to the movies, all that stuff. Yeah, it was good to be there and to offer support and to tell stories and to remember. And Shelley has stayed in touch as well after leaving there. But yeah, we've known those kids since they were little. I didn't go that many times to Mysore. Many people have been more times than me. But it was because of those early years and those special moments of connection, I guess. So yeah, it was good to be there. And some other friends came. Heidi came and Johnny Smith.
Oh, cool.
So it was interesting for all of us to go there because we were the old school, family friends, We were just there as their friends. I didn't want anything. We don't want a yoga posture. We don't want anything. We're just there for them. We just went there solely for that purpose and hung out with them and had meals and talks and cried and laughed. And as you know, Shelley flew into Virginia to be with a family right after Sharat passed. And so she was there to support them in that moment. And it's just the reality. Somehow yoga people might get the idea, oh, you do this yoga, nothing bad's going to happen to you. You're not going to get sick. Well, we're all going to get sick. We get old. And I'm losing friends that practice yoga, right? Dying of cancer and diseases and accidents and all sort of stuff. I've always said the fact that we do this yoga, it doesn't make us immortal. It doesn't make us bulletproof. But it does give us a filtration system that allows us to cope and to better deal with the realities and challenges of the temporal nature of our existence. And so putting it into practice is during these times. What does it mean? And be grateful that we have this tool. And did you jump through? You didn't jump through. Did you bind your hands? You're not bind your hands. But look beyond all those things. And there are differences. The Ashtanga family is like a true family. There's different sibling rivalry and crazy Uncle David. You're at the family reunion. All of it's there.
Yeah.
And rather than try to see this one's different or that one's right and this one's wrong, look beneath and see that the blood of Ashtanga flows through our veins. We're all the same. We're doing the best we can. We're trying to share this practice in the ways we understand, the ways we know. In about a week and a half, I'm going to be in California teaching with Richard Freeman and his wife Mary, and
yeah.
Dina
Confluence.
Kingsburg, and LaRuga, and Kino, and Tim Feldman, and these are all really different personalities.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that there's differences and also support and love each other. We're not perfect. So Mysore was a poignant trip for us.
Yeah.
It felt like, in a way, a closing of a circle. I don't say I'll never go back, but this felt like an important moment to return.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I was thinking just this morning that I met you when I was 21, I think, maybe 22. I was selling T-shirts for you at a yoga conference. Sharon Moon had set me up selling your T-shirts.
I had T-shirts?
You had T-shirts, and I was selling them. I remember Doug walking in and meeting him at this conference that you had set up in Austin. And
that horrible
yeah,
wow,
it was great.
The Southwest Yoga. Oh,
Rodney,
it was
there.
great for participants.
Yeah, we had a great
I'll let you
time.
finish your story, then I'll give you behind the scenes on that.
I'd love it. I was 21 and I met you, and I'm older than you were now when I met you. I'm turning 50 tomorrow. And so I've been doing Ashtanga Yoga now like 33 years. And I'm still kind of waiting for that moment when I'm going to turn into David Swenson. I'm kind of...
What, you want to lose all your hair? What's what you wish for, man?
Right.
It could happen.
And I just want to ask, Pattabhi Jois Guruji, as we used to call him, he always told us that, 30 years you do Ashtanga Yoga, 30 years practice, that's enough. And do you think that's right? Do you think it is enough? You look like you're still practicing. Like you've got veins popping out of your arms.
Well,
you're still doing it.
I don't remember him saying that. I wish I'd have heard that.
Oh, you
I'd have stopped a while back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you should have stopped a while back then.
I got some extra credit here.
You did.
I missed that part.
No,
you were absent that day in class.
That was something I heard all the time back in the 90s. Oh, yeah, 30 years you do practice. 30 years is enough. I was like, okay. All right.
You know what?
Didn't...
It's just a number. It's a thing.
Yeah.
I tell people now, this is your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And you decide what dosage you need. In those younger years of it, the Labrador dog phase, when you're just like,
yeah.
Wow, why practice once a day? I'll practice twice a day. Yeah. Whoa. And you're just banging through the series.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah.
And then there's plateaus where most of us spend most of the life and where there's not much change. And then there's all of them, like that.
Yeah.
But the dosage of medicine should really be determined by the student. And as you become more mature, you start understanding that this is true. And that, okay, 6 days a week, whatever it is, it's your medicine. And what medicine do you need? 3A, 3B, the final three postures at closing, which was the original short form invented by Pattabhi Jois, right?
Mm-hmm.
Takes like 10 minutes. Do you practice 5 days a week, 3 days a week, once a week? Yeah. Administer the medicine as you require to keep you functioning and moving and feeling good. Yeah. So that's the reality for all of us. And to say it's 30 years or to give a number, who knows? And the other thing is, it doesn't have to be 30 years. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's 1 year. Maybe it's 3 years. Ashtanga doesn't have to be a lifetime choice. For many people, it's a stepping stone that got you from here to there. And then you found this other thing that you enjoy. Maybe you come back to Ashtanga. Maybe you never do it again. It can just be one little part of all of these steps. And for some people, it's that. Other people commit their life to it. And it's okay to not only do Ashtanga. Yeah. You can do yoga cross-training. Ooh, you could do Ashtanga Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Do Iyengar Tuesday and Thursday. And save Saturdays for that fun nude yoga, goat yoga, beer drinking, inversion, chakra opening, hot chanting class.
The goats do get in there into your bits.
I have the hot chanting.
So I don't try to tell people what to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important people hear that.
What, they want to know where that class is? Where's that class? I want that class.
We'll put that link in the show notes.
Because I think a lot of students and teachers walk around feeling guilty that they're not practicing 6 days a week or that they didn't do their full practice, which, could be 90 minutes or 2 hours or however, whatever that full practice definition is. And there's a lot of shame, I think, that gets wrapped up and wound around these ideas that we've sort of created within ourselves of what it means to do a yoga practice or to do an Ashtanga yoga practice in particular. And I think it's so valuable to have someone like yourself who has devoted his whole life to, this practice, but also has lived a life with many different, things, ups and downs and Hare Krishna intermissions and different things going on where, you can really, I don't know, maybe appease some of that shame or that guilt or that, like the Ashtanga yoga guilt that comes up in students and teachers too.
It can be in anything.
Yeah.
It's your trainer at the gym that guilts you or whatever. And I don't even blame the teachers. It's out of some good intention. Maybe they're in the Labrador dog phase and they're 27 years old and they're telling somebody that's 67 how their body should feel, and it just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So I say this a lot. The duty of a teacher is to encourage and to inspire and to facilitate practice. That's it. I'm not telling you what else to do. I'll show you how to do this safely, how to modify it, how to do this the rest of your life or for the next 10 days, whatever it is you want to do. There is something to be gained from that intense disciplinary approach to it as well, right?
Yeah.
That disciplined approach of, I'm going to do it. There's something you gain from that as well. Mm-hmm. But then to understand that it's not all or nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that good teachers create thinking students, and the best of all teachers create students that don't need them anymore. Rather than fostering codependence where there's teachers that do that and students are paralyzed. They can't make decisions or what color should I paint my yoga room? What direction should my bed face? And rather than do that, let your students think and, respect what they're doing, respect others, apply the practice to their needs. And that's what we want, really.
Yeah.
It becomes healthier. And this becomes paradoxical because people go, oh, Ashtanga, but it's so hardcore. And go, but if you call something ballet, this is choreography. This is the Nutcracker Ballet. Mm-hmm. If you want to learn the Nutcracker Ballet, this is what it is. It doesn't mean it's the best ballet on the planet, but this is what it is. You want to learn the Nutcracker Ballet, this is what it is. And you can only go so far and still call it the Nutcracker, right? I mean, if you come with Doc Martin boots and hip hop music, it's okay if you call it that.
Yeah.
But I just say this is choreography. This is a Beethoven symphony, and there's a C-sharp chord there. It is what it is, right? There's room for self-expression, but you're learning a system. I'm not saying it's superior to other things, but this is a system that I think has value. And if people want to do it, there's myriad ways to approach it.
Yeah, totally. One thing that you said once before, something to the effect of yoga teaches us how to die a good death.
Did I say that? Wow.
I thought he said, don't let yoga ruin your life. That's what
I did say that. Don't let yoga ruin your life. I think more than one of us have said that. Yeah. I don't know about the good death part, but...
like it teaches us how to die in a way where we're at peace, and that we'll only find out if our practice really works, like how well we practice at the time of our death.
I know what story you're alluding to. Yeah. And those of you that are better with Sanskrit pronunciation can correct me, but in Bhagavad Gita, Tehinos ninyata dehe komanam yavaram jaratata hantarasraptir virastatra namuyati. In this life from childhood to youth to old age, we're constantly changing bodies. The time of death is another change of body, and the self-realized soul is not bewildered by this change. So if you analyze that, and this could be a whole, big, long discussion, but we think we know who we are. I keep introducing myself as David, but when I was born, I had this little body, and then I was a 7-year-old body, and now I'm a 68-year-old body. 68-year-old. 68, I was slipping by. So who's David? Yeah, so we realize, okay, well, the body's always changing. Oh, maybe I'm a collection of my thoughts and my memories and stuff, but memories can be erased with the push of an Alzheimer's button and all this stuff. So if we look then and say, well, what is left? And again, without going into a lot of great detail here, then there's some spiritual spark in there that is untainted by the fluctuations of the material world. It's untainted. It just keeps going with the change of bodies. And the second part of that says the self-realized soul is not bewildered by this change. The time of death is another change of body. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by this. Well, if I could understand beyond just logic that, well, I've had a lot of bodies already. The body I have now, when I'm 78, I'll look back and go, a 68-year-old body wasn't so bad.
It's true.
Oh, maybe I'll have that one back now.
Yeah.
Right? But then if we realize, well, I've already had a bunch of bodies, but I'm still David. The time of death, it's another change of body. And without getting religious about it, you go to heaven, you take a reincarnation. It's a change of body. Self-realized soul is not confused by this change. That means if I can understand beyond logic that, yes, in this life, I've already had a bunch of bodies. When I die, it's another change. I would be able to surrender. And the story then is described to be like, there's a deer in the forest eating grass. It's nice and chill and mellow. There's a tiger over here in the bushes. The deer doesn't know it. I'm just telling this like the cliff notes of the big story. But the deer hears a rustle, looks up. The tiger comes out, claws, jaws, kills the deer, wrestles me down, kills me and eats me, right? So that deer is all chill and relaxed, and all of a sudden it's not anymore. Now this is suffering and agony. Fine. This is a mama tiger. She goes back into the forest where her babies are waiting for her. She still has blood on her fur. What is the emotion of the little tigers? Is it the same as the deer when it can encounter the tiger? Mm-mm. The little babies are like, woohoo, mommy's here. Yay, it's breakfast time. And for them, she represents sustenance, safety, love. She wants to move her babies from there to there. How does she do it? With the same jaws. She picks them up, and now it's very gentle. You want to know what surrender is? Look at a baby cat or a dog or whatever when their mom picks them up. They are totally just like, okay, mom, chill. I'm good. Yeah, because they know what could happen. The mother's carefully places them on the ground over there. Mm-hmm. Usually I ask people, what do the jaws of the tiger represent? Well, it's death. 2 encounters of death. One was the deer. When the jaws of death came, pain, suffering, misery, anxiety, because all I know is this body and me and some yoga postures I can do and some stuff I've collected. That's all I know is me. Well, all that's torn away. The other encounter was the little baby tigers. Yeah. If all we know is this, then we're the deer. For those lucky souls who understand on a cellular level that our true identity is a spiritual spark, unaffected by all this other stuff. If I could realize that, not just logical understanding, but realization level, I could surrender at the time of death and allow it to carry me like the next thing, like the mama tiger carrying her little baby. So that's the story that you say, if we can really realize this stuff, that's the ultimate goal. And the paradox of all of it is, then why do all these yoga postures physical things? Well, we do all the physical things to help us to understand we're not this physical thing. Mm-hmm. That's a paradox. But we are in a physical thing, so you use it as a tool. Yeah. When we drive our car, we're not thinking, I am this car. I'm using this car to drive me down the road. I'm not thinking, I am the car.
Depends,
but some people do.
Who you are. Yeah.
but that's what I was going to say. But when you start to identify with the car, with the possession, it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
But if we understand, well, we can use it as a tool for learning and understanding, et cetera. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, like death, I think we're going to have to release you to your next appointment. I just want to say how much
try to surrender.
Yeah. I have a lot of other questions. A lot of things came up.
To hear how terrible the behind the scenes of the Southwest Yoga.
I can give a story. I'll give you a few more minutes.
We got a few more minutes. All of the listeners want to hear the behind the scenes.
Okay, before you do that, then if you're going to tell us about that conference, which was awesome,
Has
me
nothing to do
personally.
with the book, by the way.
Nothing to do with the book. But why didn't your sister Diana follow you and Doug down this twisted path
Yoga
of
hole.
surf and
Well, she had her
rags?
thing. She's the oldest.
Yeah.
Oh, she's
That's
older
what-
than Doug.
Yeah, she's 8 years older than me.
Oh, she doesn't care about what her younger brothers are doing. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
So she was dating older people,
Yeah.
She's still, some of her friends overlapped with Doug's because they were not so far different, but she was, not dating surfers so much as like football players and things like that. And she was a cheerleader.
Okay,
And she was more
different.
mainstream and totally went a mainstream life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just that we're all individuals. And even my family, we're all so different.
Yeah.
My mom and dad, tall and short, and 5 people that make up a family, but very different. Even my brother and I mean, you've encountered, but we're very different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though
For
we
sure.
both do yoga, have similar lifestyles, but it wasn't that strange that she would have different interests.
All right. So tell us what a nightmare hosting a conference is behind the scenes.
Yoga Journal Conference was the big conference in America.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend, Julie, she decided to have the Southwest Yoga Conference. This would be a competition with Yoga Journal. They freaked out, tried to shut us down and stuff behind that. So I was going to partner with her. And we were just investing our own money in this. We rented the whole convention center in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
Huge place. We had 50 teachers. Rodney Yee, Colleen, Barrel Bender Birch.
Every class was packed, man.
So we had 50 teachers.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was like a year and a half work. Like 3 weeks before, we're like, okay, I'm in debt for the rest of my life. We're not even going to break even. And in the end, I think after 2 years of work, there was something left over like $1,250 that we split. But we were just happy that we did not go bankrupt. But oh my God, I got the behind scenes look at a lot of these yoga teachers. They were such divas, oh, could you just deliver those to my room? And I'm like, you got 2 legs. You can pick that thing up and walk it over there. You can pick up that pamphlet over there. What are you talking about? So I decided I much prefer to just teach at a yoga conference rather than organize them to deal with all these prima donna teachers. A friend of mine in England had a big studio and a teacher whose name shall not say. And a lot of these teachers, they'll travel with their like entourage. They got their assistants and stuff. It's all just me. I don't know. Anyway, their assistant calls the studio and says, I'm just wondering around what time a car may be arriving to pick up the talent and deliver them to the studio.
Ooh.
It says, you may inform the talent that London has a very fine underground tube system and they can find their own way here. We're not sending a limo for the talent.
Yeah,
whoa.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. That's
Anyway.
so funny. I remember when we hosted you, you were like, I want to walk. Don't let me walk. We kept offering you rides. And you're like, nah, I want to walk.
I want to walk. Yeah.
Another thing. I was today years old when I learned how to mop. And I learned that after I read your Captain Kino, the guy that you worked for.
Yep.
He taught you how to mop. I did not know that's how you mopped. I thought you take the mop in the water, and then you brush the floor with the mop water. And he went and took the mop, and he threw the bucket of water, and then you pick it up with the mop.
Oh.
He had he had a really horrible, dirty mouth with cursing all the time.
You listed a lot of those words.
Guy. Yes, I'm not going to mention them now. But I was mopping the kitchen and this it's still there. Captain Kino's is still there in Encinitas.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It's still there. I went in there last time I was out there. I was like, wow, it's still here.
That's amazing.
I was mopping, like you said, dip it and swash. He goes, that's not how you mop a floor, David. He comes and grabs the bucket and just flings the whole bucket of water in the air and goes, whoosh. He says, now dry the floor.
Dry the floor with the mop.
With the mop. I was like, wow, that was a learning moment.
Yeah, that's life-changing.
There are 1,000 lessons like this in your book, and I appreciated learning. I'm up to page 92, And I appreciated reading all of them.
Okay, you guys, it's been fun.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Take
Thank
good
you
care.
so
We'll
much,
see you
David.
down the road, and aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you so much for joining us for this meaningful conversation with David Swenson, a true elder and guide in the world of yoga. And as we reflect on his insights and stories, I was personally reminded of that delicate balance, this paradox that we all live inside between discipline and surrender, pain and joy or humor, and effort and ease, and really that the yoga is teaching us to find this middle path and the balance or the integration, more specifically, of the opposites, right? To integrate and then become whole, become one, moving beyond the opposites. David's voice is just such a beacon of truth, humility, and lived experience and real wisdom. His presence invites us not only to practice more deeply, but to live more honestly and to also trust the unfolding of our unique journey. So I hope you're feeling inspired and motivated to get on your mat or go for a walk or do something to just really embody some of the wisdom, some of those little nuggets of gold that you heard today here. And before you go, a quick reminder that doors are closing in just 1 week for my Ancient Breathing 2.0 6-week deep dive into pranayama and breathwork. You're going to learn tools for energetic mastery and inner transformation, connect to the prana more deeply. Live classes are beginning next week on May 18th. All the classes will be on a Sunday, and this is your chance to join this round of Ancient Breathing 2.0. It's the only time I'm going to be offering it this year in this format. And you'll find the enrollment in the show notes or reach out to me on Instagram at Harmony Slater Official, and I will send you the link if you're interested in joining or if you have any questions at all. So until next time, I hope to see you live and in person on May 18th inside Ancient Breathing 2.0. But if not, keep listening, keep finding harmony, and finding your own rhythm within the dance of these beautiful opposites. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.